everybody. Welcome to the session of CAs and Startups featuring Karan Anand today. Karan, we are so glad to have you today. So before we move to, your entrepreneurship journey, we would like to know about your corporate journey up till now, since you have a background of like 12 years journey with GS and GT. So we would like to know about that.
So I started interning with Grant Thornton in 2007 in the New Delhi office. I was very clear from the very beginning. I wasn't interested in attending college, to be honest. So I thought that instead of going to a college for 3 years, I might as well start CA. When I started, it was kind of coincidence that after my first year, it used to be PE1 that time. The course got changed, and I was kind of mandated to start my internship right after my PE1. So yeah, I started interning in 2007 with Grant Thornton. Worked on clients across multiple industries, service, retail, freight forwarders, manufacturing. So got a very good broad experience of working on very different clients in the areas of audit assurance, advisory, IFRS advisory. So whatever I got, to be honest, like I made sure I didn't kind of leave anything out. I always put my hand up. I was working like really long hours on multiple clients a lot of times, and the firm kind of recognized that. So I grew pretty rapidly in the firm. Then I qualified and kind of continued with Grant Thornton. Went to London for a bit, worked there, then came back, and then we had this idea that why not, clients who've got presence here in India and London. Like I started kind of managing those clients with team based in UK and here as well. So I was kind of doing back and forth. And then in 2014, I thought that it had already been like more than 7 years, and I wanted to do something different. So I left my job. I really liked what I was doing, to be honest, but I just thought that I wanted to try something else. I didn't really have a job, but I spoke to my partner, and he was very supportive, and he said, if you really want to leave, I don't want to stop you, but when you want to come back, it's going to be like a form filling exercise, right? So that's the assurance I got from one of the audit leads in Grant Thornton. And yeah, I left during my notice period. I got like a interview call from someone from Goldman. I actually, to be honest, like in Delhi that time, there were very few people who were kind of shifting to Bangalore because Goldman had an office in Bangalore and Mumbai. So I interviewed with Goldman, went well, got offered a role, knew nothing about the role, and just took kind of a leap of faith, joined Goldman. What I joined as and what I ended up doing were very, very, very completely different things. I started as a senior analyst, grew very rapidly to be vice president in very quick span of time. I was working on a tech product. So, just to explain, investment banks, globally systematic investment banks need to maintain something called, cash and cash equivalent. So liquidity, basically, to meet their short-term liabilities, to make sure that, if an event like the financial crisis was to happen, they don't have to rely on any external government funding. They can internally manage it. I started as an analyst in that team and started managing the team globally very quickly. We were developing a tech product. So I started to see a lot of tech during that role. We were building a product which was mandated by Fed and the PRA in the UK. So got kind of hands-on experience, had a very good tech team. So in 2014, I think I said I left GT in 2014, left in 2014. Yeah. Joined Goldman in 14. And then in 19, I got offered another role. In Goldman, they kind of, encourage you to move teams. That's really good from a career perspective, because typically people in Goldman end up spending 30, 35 years in the firm, right? So if you really want to know how the firm works, it's very good to kind of move around. I was lucky enough because we were kind of building a tech product. So we got to know the firm from, very early on, but that's a good thing to kind of move around. So I got offered a role in 2019, and then I really liked what I was doing. I liked my colleagues, I liked my teammates, etc. But then I took a call that I wanted to start up for really long, and this was kind of a good time for me to, think about that rather than moving teams and delaying what I really wanted to do. Uh, I had built a runway for myself, keeping this in mind, so that I don't put, I mean, I was married, so I didn't want to put my family kind of under financial stress or burden because I was taking the call. So I had built a runway to make sure that I had enough time to sit down, think of an idea, and do something about it. So I left in 2019. I think April 19 or May 19 is when I left. And then for the first 5, 6 months, I brainstormed with a few people about a few things that I had been thinking upon. Uh, and I think in early 2020, I joined Kalpane as a co-founder. So my wife actually is the founder of Kalpane. She started it single-handedly, and she was building it. And then sometime in 2020, COVID started to happen. So I thought it'd be a good idea because I was like, when I left my job, I had already started helping her. So I was spending like a good 3 to 4 hours on a daily basis, trying to understand the business, trying to understand the customer, how can we scale it and those things. So finally, I mean, I think I really got interested in it, and I wanted to do something which was, in tech. So yeah, I mean, I joined in 2020 as a co-founder.
First of all, this is very notable that, being a CA person, being a CA, you wanted to move to something tech. So that is great. And also the fact that, you wanted to skip college and attend articleship, because right now this is not the case. We students want to attend college and, maintain articleship by side, but we are also, craving to attend some college life because we don't have that. So that is very different thing I have ever heard.
So I think there are two things, right? One is our course is such that people don't really network or socialize because there's no in-class learning. So people kind of, I think, crave for tuitions. Tuitions used to be kind of the parallel to college for CA students. And I spoke to a lot of interns or colleagues, even in GT, and similarly, a lot of people attended tuitions just to network outside of the firm they were working in. Uh, I kind of decided very early on that I didn't really want to attend tuitions. Uh, I don't do well, to be honest, in group learning. So I thought if I can, rather than attending a 4 hour, I mean, I didn't have the time, to be honest. Even if I wanted to, I didn't have the luxury of 4 hours in the morning because I wanted to be at the client at 9:30 and kind of, start picking up work and see how things work. Because if people underestimate the role internship plays for a CA. Those 3.5 years of internship, I think it was 42 months for me. So yeah, it was 42 months when I started. So those 3.5 years were basically the building blocks of what I had been doing like post that. The amount of exposure that I got in those 3.5 years, the clients I worked with, the in-depth knowledge that I kind of gained speaking. Like I think people take months to get a meeting with the CFO of a public listed company, right? As interns, we have that luxury to actually speak to CFO of a company uh, because we are working with them on a daily basis. So people kind of don't understand the importance of internship. That is the most important thing for someone starting CA to make sure that they give their like 100%, if not more, when it comes to internship.
Okay, so we have a lot of CAs in our audience who might want to take this leap of going towards entrepreneurship, but they don't know what factors to consider in while taking the decision. They might already be at some good position in some good company, just like you, but then they don't know what things to consider before moving into entrepreneurship. So, what factors did you consider?
I think first and foremost is start up for the right reasons. Don't start up because you hate your job. The chances of you not succeeding if you're leaving for the wrong reasons are stacked against you if you start up for those reasons. I mean, I absolutely love what I did at Goldman. Uh, and I had like whatever time I had spent at Goldman, the 5 years I spent, uh, I had a pretty good career path, and the, the the career ahead also was pretty good. But leave for the right reason and start up for the right reasons. Don't start up because you hate your current job. That is in your hand, right? When you start up or when you start or like start off on the entrepreneurial journey, everything is variable. In your job, most things are actually linear, but when you're running your business, a lot of things are variables. So make sure you start up for the right reason. The other is think about how you're going to manage your finances. I mean, all of us are CAs, right? We can definitely kind of put together a basic plan on Excel, think like saying that this is our monthly expenses. This is how much we need if we were to not make any money for the next 2 years, 3 years, whatever it may be. And it depends from person to person, right? A lot of people take care of their parents financially. So that's like an added expense to it. So you don't really want to put your parents under financial stress because you really want to start up. So the more financial, implications you're able to kind of figure out before you leave your job, better it will be. Also, don't start up thinking that you're going to raise money in the first month of starting up. That never happens. So always put scenarios into consideration, thinking that, okay, you're not going to raise any money for 3 years. You're not going to get any money from the business for the first 3 years, 3 to 4 years. I mean, first 3 to 5 years, to be honest, is like very basic, building the baseline for your business. It's better to not put your family through the financial stress and make sure that you have that covered. There are other ways to do it. I mean, a lot of people, like I have friends in tech who left their job, but who've started with freelancing 2 days a week to make sure that they have some cash flow to take care of their base salary, right? Whatever excess disposable income they had on a monthly basis, they kind of let go of that. So that's the opportunity cost of running their startup. So you have to plan it in a way that, and I can't comment for all, right? Everyone has different financial conditions. I was kind of lucky that my parents are financially not dependent on me. So I could, I didn't have to worry about that factor. In our case, me and my wife, both of us are running the same business. So obviously we're all in, right? In other cases, sometimes the spouse is working. So you can kind of have a chat with your spouse saying that, for some time I might be dependent on your salary, or you'll have to probably cover for both of us. So it depends on, everyone's personal financial conditions before starting up.
So now coming to Kalpane. So first of all, the name intrigues me because it is not Kalpana, but it's Kalpane. So why the name Kalpane?
So it stems from a Kannada word, which means imagination. Because my wife got the idea after we had moved to Bangalore, so she wanted to have the origin in Kannada. I mean, it's actually a Sanskrit word. I mean, the transcript is very similar. So that's where kind of, the name originated from. That it stems from imagination, from creativity.
So Kalpane is an e-commerce platform for homegrown brands, like artisanal products, homegrown artisanal products. So I believe this is a niche segment, right? This is not everybody can afford, or maybe everybody wants to buy. So what has been your USP and who is your target audience?
Right. So what we're trying to do at Kalpane is we're trying to get Indian makers, give them a platform and market the products as well as the platform to a global audience, right? You mentioned a very important thing about price. So recently in the last, couple of decades, India's seen a boom of e-commerce, but most of it is driven by price sensitivity, right? A lot of it is driven by price sensitivity. Like a lot of people even compare things across Amazon and Flipkart before they actually make a buy, right? Here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make consumers more aware of, the old Indian artisanal techniques. People would be amazed that a lot of really big showrooms and brands across the world carry actually made in India products. It's just the fact it's not marketed, so people are not made aware of the fact. So if you can go to a lot of high-end stores in New York and in London, and a lot of them do carry Indian products. We actually source products from very similar people that people go and buy. So in terms of pricing, what we're trying to do is we're connecting the consumer directly to the seller without any people in the middle, right? So we're trying to bring the cost down. The other USPs, which I don't think anyone is really able to offer, is we work with B2B outside India as well, where we're able to supply them a lot of products at cost, which in terms of quality and pricing is very, very reasonable. We're able to customize products for very smaller quantities, which, like, I mean, I think a couple of weeks back we just customized something for a really big architect firm in Dubai, and they can't go to any other country. I know that for sure. In 2 weeks we were able to basically get from ideation to the fact that the goods were dispatched. So it works like a very well-oiled machinery in India. China is not interested in doing lower quantities, right? Also, if something's handmade, what happens is the unit cost actually doesn't go down after a certain point. It starts going up purely because a lot of manual tasks are involved. So the person doing it kind of starts getting a little inefficient. So we can't offer like thousands of product of the same type to a customer and say that the price will go down. So people need to be made aware that these are not made in massive factories. Each product is handmade, handcrafted by someone in India, and that's what they're buying. They're not just buying a product, they're also buying like the whole story behind how the product is made.
Okay, so since I said that this is a niche segment, right? And so what has been your marketing strategy? Has it been organic, or how have you done it up till now?
Sure. So yes, it is a niche segment in the sense that, as I said, like right now, India obviously has massive numbers in terms of e-com users, but a lot of them are price sensitive consumers, right? So we are not typically right now targeting them, but in the next 10 years, a lot of people, with the boom of the middle class, right? People would want these kind of products. People are already kind of looking and searching for products that are different, that are not available everywhere, right? So initially it's difficult to get word of mouth out unless you have like, you have a viral moment very early on in your journey. But obviously till now, a lot of it has been paid across a lot of multiple channels. For the last 6 to 7 months, probably more, I think probably a year now, we've been focusing a lot on organic. And we want a good mix of organic. Like outside India, we're not doing any paid campaigns. So it's mostly been organic and word of mouth where people have referrals. They also have very tightly kind of knit community. So if one person buys, they typically do, talk to each other, etc. So that's kind of been the strategy till now.
So have you raised any funding up till now at Kalpane?
No, right till now, it's just been privately held. There's no external investors involved.
Okay. Also, what are your future plans at Kalpane? How do you see it growing in the coming years?
So I think one big segment that we've just started targeting is B2B outside India, because that's a kind of unserved market. They're dependent on big wholesalers in their respective countries, which do take away a lot of the margins. Also, a lot of small shop owners don't want to buy into large quantities, which is where we come in. We give them the flexibility with no minimums. They can place order, and then we end up offering them products. We can also customize a lot of products for them at basically like no additional cost, right? In terms of supply chain, I mean, we're working with few of the best companies, so we're able to kind of pass that shipping cost back to the customers to make sure that they don't end up paying more for the cost, because it all adds up to the unit cost of the product. So those are the things. The other is going forward, I mean, we want to work with, so right now, because of, I mean, I joined in 2020 and then COVID happened in March, right? So for me, it's always been for the last 1.5 years has been through COVID. So it's been challenging in terms of supply chain and all of that. But going forward, we do want to engage with people from clusters where artisans kind of reside, and then we want to work with them personally and get them on board. We've just started to do that with a couple of people, and we've seen like really good response. They know the technique very well, better than anyone else. They're just not up to date in terms of contemporary designs, what people are looking for. So that's where we kind of think we can add a lot of value to those artisan classes.
That's great. So, do you feel that you should have moved to this startup space earlier?
When I left my job at Grant Thornton, to be honest, I actually thought that I should start up then as well. I left without having a job. So I was thinking I should probably start up then, but then the opportunity at Goldman, I mean, I just thought it'll be good for me to move to a new city. And Bangalore was just kind of started to come up around 13, 14. Flipkart had just become big. So I just felt that it's the right city to be in. So it kind of became a easy decision for me to move to Bangalore when I got the job at Goldman. But I think there's no right or wrong time, right? Like it depends on everyone's own personal experience. I mean, just to put out a stat, like late stage like the chances of late stage founders founding a company and making it successful are much higher. It also could stem from a fact that the risk appetite is lower. So people typically don't take up a lot of risk. So if you were to start up right out of college, the chances of success for a startup are much lower. But it's because you also have time, so you tend to do much more things, right? Also, you're much more like your risk appetite is much massive, much large. So obviously the risk and reward ratio is always there, right? So there's no right or wrong time. I mean, if you really want to start up, think about it. If you have an idea, discuss with peers. Always make sure you have a broad team which covers a lot of aspects of business. You will obviously have to build a team and get other people. The idea is that get the right set of people initially to make sure that you have a greater chance of success.
So, since you have, a 12 years journey, corporate journey, what are the lessons you learned at GS and GT, maybe, which are, proving useful right now with Kalpane?
I think so. A lot of skills are transferable to business, right? Initially, when we are interning and someone tells us to do a variance analysis, like a lot of people don't apply brains, right? They just take a threshold, and whatever's below threshold, immaterial, don't even bother. And whatever's above threshold, write the 2 reasons that the client is giving, and then be done with it, right? I think whatever job we do is very important. We apply brains. It's very, very important that we're aware of how the industry is moving. So before we actually go to the client, we should do our homework and see how the industry is moving, like on a macro level. And then if the client is actually trending in the negative direction, then there are a lot of questions we should be asking the clients that, the whole industry is moving in a different direction. There could be other reasons, right? The client is under financial stress, etc., whatever, right? But whatever we do during our internship, we should be asking questions. I mean, I was very lucky initially that I got really good managers and they were willing to kind of share a lot of the knowledge and answer the questions. So ask a lot of questions, attend a lot of trainings. It's very important to do internship from a very good firm so that you get exposure early on. Don't look for a small firm that's going to let you attend 2 tuitions a day. That's a very bad approach. The end product will be bad. I mean, if you start like that, the end product will be bad, whether you run your own practice or you start a business or you do whatever, right? Because your base is not strong. So get your base right. Ask questions, try to understand things. And yeah, I mean, I think just now there's so much awareness. A lot of people are connected. Just talk to people who you think are doing well, right? If you don't get internship in first year, try and get a transfer in second year. But it's very important that you do your internship very well, like from a good place.
What is your say on CAs in entrepreneurship, and how do you think CAs are different from maybe others in entrepreneurship skills, or what makes them different?
See, any entrepreneurship coming from any background, whether it's finance for a CA or like from an engineering background, there'll be a lot of areas which the entrepreneurship will rely on other team members to kind of fulfill or get him or her up to speed to, right? I mean, the CA is well placed in terms of, obviously, we get to work on finance, tax, and those kind of things very early on. So a lot of the business aspect of it, like the good economics of a business, variable cost, stuff like that, which is very, very core to running a business. I think people just think it's bookish. It's not. To be profitable at the transaction level is the most important thing for a business. And I think if someone's starting up as a CA, they'll obviously be able to kind of work that out pretty quickly, right? I personally know a couple of founders who are not from a finance background. They had to shut their startups within the first 9 months because they couldn't really figure out their unit economics soon enough. Their business model was obviously very tricky, but still. So it's very important for us. See, I mean, these things, come pretty easily to a chartered accountant.
Yeah, right.
Right. Also, I mean, you should always have an aptitude to learn. I mean, I'm not from tech, but I work with, colleagues from tech. So if there's a problem, obviously I want to know what the problem is. How did it arise? How are we solving it, and how can we avoid it in future, right? So problem solving is obviously at the core of any function in a business. So yeah, I mean, I think it's your personal aptitude towards, solving problems that will probably take you afar.
Okay. So one last question from my side. So one piece of advice you would like to give our budding entrepreneurs, like you have given a lot of insights, but one that piece of advice that everybody should know before starting up.
So, everyone has ideas, and everyone thinks, oh, I had this idea and I didn't really start up and I could have done this. So if you have an idea, you truly believe in it, get a plan together and execute. Till you execute, you won't know what pitfalls or downfalls you're going to have when you're building or starting up. And I'm not saying like you can go all in, right? It depends on person to person. So for me, I think the most important thing initially was that I wanted to build myself a financial runway of at least 3 years, so that even if I were just to ideate for 3 years, right? Worst case scenario, I don't even get an idea for 3 years and I get back to a job. I didn't want to really go through any stress of thinking about, okay, you know what, I'm not making monthly money. So I'm putting myself, and that itself is a big call for a lot of people, right? A lot of people save to, let's say, buy a house. I was very clear that I wanted to start up. So I didn't want to put any financial burden on myself. Like I didn't obviously want an EMI when I didn't have a job. So you need to make sure that you match your assets and liability before you leave your job to make sure your balance sheet positive when you leave.
So I think I read this yesterday or today only that, everybody is a Bill Gates until they implement their idea. So I think that is very, very true. Implementation is the core of everything, I guess.